Good morning. Good to be back with y'all. Been back for about a week, but actually back with you now for Mass. Father Bradley did a great job holding down the fort, and Father Robbie, I understand, was here also. Was he okay? Yeah, don't believe anything he says. He's a liar. He works with high school students, so, you know, that's... But anyway, the trip to Spain and Portugal was really phenomenal. Lots of beautiful churches. First in Barcelona, we got to have Mass at Sagrada Familia, and it's just still not finished, and it's just this magnificent, huge church. It's weird because it's so modern, but it's still, anyway. And then we got to have Mass at Fatima. We got to have Mass at the Church of St. Anthony in Lisbon. I didn't bring St. Anthony back with me, though. He came from Italy via another route. Thank you to the generous donors that wanted St. Anthony to be here. And then we had Mass in Compostela at the end of the Camino. I walked the Camino. Oh, yeah. 3 kilometers. But I'm going to tell everybody I walked the Camino. That's it. But when we got there to the cathedral at the end of the Mass, I walked into the church, and it's just, again, it's another one of these huge churches, and you look, and the cathedral in Santiago is known for what's called the Bota Fumiero, which means like the flaming boat, and it's this giant thurible, you know, that the incense goes in. It's probably about yay big, about yay tall, and it hangs from the ceiling right in front of the altar. And the purpose of it is because back in the olden days, when the pilgrims would arrive walking from France, they smelled bad. Not because they're French, well, probably because they're French, but they smelled more bad because of the long walk. And so they had this giant incense monster thing that would swing. So anyway, the way that the incense thing works is they only use it like on special feast days, or if you call ahead and you request and you make a donation of €500. So my travel agent, of course, called ahead and said, I'd like to make the donation of €500. They said, sorry, it's not possible. We can't do it. And she said, can we try a different day? Can we try a different Mass time? Nope, sorry, not possible. Can't do it. She said, okay, we're willing to pay, though. Nope, sorry, not going to happen. So we get there, and I walk into the church, and I didn't realize it just hangs there like when it's not in use. And so there it is. I'm like, oh, there's the thing. It's not really as big as I thought it would be, but still there it is. And then the way that it works is it's got this complicated pulley system, and there are these 8 guys that dress in these little red robes. They look like little, I don't know, hobbits or something. And they grab onto the rope that's split into 8 pieces, and they pull down on the rope, and the thing swings. And it goes almost like vertical. They've got these big, long transepts, and it's insane. If you look it up on YouTube. Look up when Pope Benedict went there to the cathedral, and he had this just little like boyhood smile on his face as he watched it swing back and forth. Anyway, I see one of the little hobbit guys in the red robe before Mass, and I'm like, okay, maybe they're going to do it. This is it, all right. But then I realized he's just kind of the sacristan. He was the altar server. But then towards the end of Mass, I noticed 7 more little hobbit men come out, and I was like, oh yeah, this is it. It's getting real. And so they go and they grab the thing, you know, and they lower the rope and everything, and they get it, and you got to go and like pick the thing up like this to open it, and then they get like a shovel, and they just load incense into it. And obviously I was like a kid in a candy store at this point. And then the one guy takes it and picks it up and just like throws it, and they start pulling it, and they start swinging, and then the organ goes, and it's loud, and everybody afterwards was like, wow, you had like the biggest grin on your face when that was happening. I said, yeah, I know, it was very cool. And as it swung back and forth, there was like this fireball in it because it was moving so fast, and there's so much charcoal in it. It was just awesome. But I'm glad to be back in the real world, because the thing that always gets me when I go to Europe, and I've told you guys this before, is you go into the churches and you look and you're like, wow, this is this magnificent, big, beautiful church. And yeah, the pilgrim churches like Santiago and like Sagrada Familia, they're full. But most of the other churches you go to, they're empty. And they've got this beautiful architecture and everything, and you look and it's like, but where are the people? And you just think to yourself, like, peasants poured out all that they had to build these places, these beautiful churches, and now nobody comes to them. And so the message that Jesus gives us here, he says, I came to set fire to the earth, and how I wish it was already burning. I want the whole world to burn with zeal. Fire is an amazing thing, right? It can do a lot of things. It can cause a lot of damage. But Jesus is saying, I want the world to be burning with zeal. And then he says, do you think that I've come for peace? Well, Lord, your title, Prince of Peace, would make me think, yeah, you did come for peace. He says, no, I came for division. Family will be divided, 2 against 3, 3 against 2, father against son, son against father, mother against daughter, daughter against mother, mother-in-law against daughter-in-law, although that one kind of goes without saying. It's always been that way. And he just, it's such a hard thing for us to hear. Well, what do you mean, Jesus, division? I thought that you were all about bringing us together, uniting us as members of your body. I thought that you were all about, making us to be comfortable, making us feel good. Maybe many of us, we grew up and religion was taught to us in that way that Jesus is your buddy, right? Has anybody been to the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception, Washington, D.C.? Does that Jesus look like he's your buddy? The one on the apps, the big, scary, built Jesus? That's always a frightening sight, that mural. But for so many of us, we kind of like to think of Jesus as just, he's this nice guy. He's a guru. Non-Christians even, oh yeah, Jesus, he was this great teacher. He had all these good sayings. He did have a lot of good sayings, and he had a lot of very strong sayings. And he says, I came for division, not peace. Now, do you think that Jesus in this case is saying, I came to just cause all sorts of chaos and make a mess and just to confuse everybody? No. He's saying, I've come not for the peace that the world desires to give. I've come not for the harmony or the concord that people desire, but I've come to kind of shake you and wake you up so that you can follow me, so that you can hear my voice, so that I can lead you to the Father. We look at Jesus' ministry, he certainly caused a lot of division. He did a lot of things that upset the people of the time, that upset the Jews, that upset the Romans so much so that they crucified him. And so we look at this idea of division and unity. So our world, it desires peace and harmony and just everybody get along and don't say anything that's going to, offend anybody. Just let's all be nice. One of the things that really got me on our trip was when we were on the boat and we had Mass every day. We wanted to advertise that we had Mass every day. We said, can you put it in your little cruise daily update that there's Mass? It's in the main dining room at the very front of the boat. Oh no, our corporate policy says that we can't. Seriously, you have a corporate policy that specifically says you can't publish a Mass time? Yeah, because it might upset some people. Well, that's stupid. The cruise director's I know, I'm sorry, I can't do anything about it. They've got yoga advertised, and they got all the other stuff advertised. So I'm okay, well, God forbid we offend somebody because we talk about religion so anyway. But it seems that that's sort of the thing, especially when I meet people out and around and they're oh, you're a priest. Yeah. And then they want to start talking, and then I start talking, and sometimes I have to issue a correction or something. Well, actually, not. And then people say, ooh, that's just too much. Let's just keep it nice and, flat and vanilla and plain. Jesus says, I came to cause division. I came to sow division. I came to bring the sword. I came not so that you could have worldly peace, not so that everybody could just get along, but I came so that you could have real eternal peace that exists in heaven. The peace that can only come from doing my will. And in doing my will, you will upset some people. That's not why you do the will of God. But there are some people who do not want the will of God to be done. There are some people who look and they say, no, let's just focus on everything here in this world. Let's focus on how we can be comfortable. Let's focus on how we can be happy. Let's focus on not the things of God. Don't challenge us. Don't push me beyond what I'm comfortable with. Just be tolerant. Tolerant of everybody except for religious people, that is. And so Jesus says family will be divided. What does that mean? If we looked at the early church, right, we had some of the early martyrs who were converts, and they were noble Romans, and they converted to this like dirty, silly, new, superstitious cult religion called Christianity. And the Romans looked at these people and they said, "What's wrong with you? Why would you convert to that? You've got Roman religion. It's way better." And they said, "You should renounce that silly Christian faith and you should come back to the Roman pagan gods." And they said, "No." And for that, they were martyred. And they ran to their martyrdom joyfully. They embraced their martyrdom as Christ embraced the cross. A paradox. For us too, we're called to embrace the cross. Even today, there are people who convert to Christianity, whether it's people who were not Christian at all and converted, whether it's people who are Protestant, and especially like in a really fundamental Protestant group, and then they say, "Hey, you know what, I'm going to become Catholic." And I've seen it tear families apart, which is a sad thing, right? Jesus doesn't want to tear families apart, but sometimes families get torn apart because people want to do the will of God. One of the really sad things that I witnessed in seminary was some guys, they didn't have their parents' support. Maybe it's because they were the only son and the parents wanted them to carry on, the family name, or because parents thought, "Oh gosh, you could do something better than being a priest. I gave you a good education, so, be a doctor or a lawyer or something." For many, it was because they'd converted, and so it was hard enough that they decided to become Catholic and now a priest, and so their families just kind of distanced themselves. And that's unfortunate. But it doesn't mean that we compromise. It doesn't mean that we say, "Oh, well, the truth isn't really all that important. We'll bend it and flex it to make it so that everybody can get along." Right? What happened when Jesus gave his bread of life discourse? And he said, "Unless you eat the flesh of man and drink his blood, you will not have life within you." And some people say this is a hard saying, and they walked away. And Jesus didn't say, "Oh, guys, come on, that's not what I really meant." He just continued, "Unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you will not have life within you." And so we can't compromise with the truth. We can't compromise with the will of God. We can't compromise with following the gospel. It's easy to say, "Yeah, we'll just kind of like water things down and we'll just sort of like let everybody, don't talk about anything controversial. We'll just let everybody be happy." And then they'll be happy and they won't know the truth and they won't really be following God. They'll be following the world. They'll be conformed to the ways of the world. And it'll bring about their condemnation. But Jesus challenges us. He says, no, you're called to more. You're called to be holy. You're called to radically change your lives. You're called to reject sin. You're called to reject the ways of the world. You're called to embrace your cross. Daily take up your cross and follow me. The first reading that we had from Jeremiah, before the part that we heard, Jeremiah, of course, is, a prophet, and God's telling him, he's like, "Hey, go and speak to Israel and tell them that they've been disobedient and unfaithful and unrepentant. And because of that, I'm going to allow the Assyrians to come and just totally sack the city and defeat them and take over, and they're going to go into exile. So go tell Israel that." Oh, Jeremiah, he's excited, isn't he? Getting to go and tell people the good news. Others have been saying, "No, it's fine. We're stronger than them. We'll be okay." Jeremiah comes in and he says, "Guys, hey, I'm God's anointed one, and he told me to tell you guys that because of your sinfulness and because of your lack of repentance, he's going to allow us to go into exile." Well, that's not a very popular thing to say, right? Nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to say, hold on a second. You want me to change the way that I am? You want me to change the way that I live? Be easier to just take you and throw you in a pit. So they throw Jeremiah in a pit, and he's there in the mud. Because he did the will of God, because he didn't want to compromise, because he wasn't looking for concord, he wasn't looking for just making everybody happy. Neither was Jesus, right? We think of Jesus as this like soft teddy bear kind of figure sometimes, but remember Jesus flipped over tables. Remember Jesus called the Pharisees a brood of vipers. And so for us, when it comes to doing God's will, what are we willing to sacrifice? What are we willing to change? Are we willing to let go of the world? Are we willing to let go of our worldly possessions? Are we willing to let go of worldly relationships? Relationships that prevent us from loving God, that prevent us from doing His will? Or do we just want to be selfish and say, no, I can have it all. I can have it all. We can't have the world and have heaven. We live here in the world. We're called to use the world. But ultimately, we're not destined for the world. We're destined for heaven. That's why we can look at the crucifix and we can say, oh yeah, that's a symbol of hope. That dead man hanging on a torture device made by the Romans to inflict the utmost pain, that's a sign of hope for us. Because we recognize that in doing God's will, in dying to self, in conforming ourselves more and more to Christ, that will bring us peace. Maybe not peace in the world where everybody's going to get along and be happy, but a peace in which we can rest secure knowing that we have a God who loves us, a God who died to save us, and a God who has prepared a place for us in heaven. And so on this day, let us reflect in our own lives on the things of the world that we need to let go of, the things that keep us from following God, the things that keep us from doing His will. And let us willingly and joyfully embrace our cross as Christ did, so that we may be able to experience that peace that only He can offer us in heaven.